Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, it's 7 o'clock in the 6 o'clock. So I'll call to order the special meeting, thank you, of the Downers Grove Park District for September 28th, 2023. If I quickly get a roll call, please.
Mr. Bender,
Here.
Mr. Dahlstrom, Mr. Kattula,
Here.
Mr. Lunt,
Here.
Ms. McDonald.
Here.
That being, I'll ask everyone to stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We have none at this time.
We'll go to communications. Oh, visitors, anybody online?
I've heard of none. Chris, do you have anyone online?
There are no online visitors.
Do we have any written correspondence?
I don't know.
You do it, well, you can get it at the end.
Okay, move along to the consent agenda.
So tonight we have 10 items, starting with the approval of minutes for the August 17th, 2023 regular minutes and August 17th, 2023 closed session minutes. The treasurer's report, investments, payment of bills in the amount of $1,947,739.53. Approval of ordinance 1315, an ordinance mending the rules and procedures for electronic attendance at meetings as previously adopted by ordinance 1155. Approval of ordinance 1316, an ordinance declaring certain park district personal property as surplus and authorizing sale of disposal. Change order number 1, deduct Maneval Construction Company, Inc., district-wide asphalt paving 2023. Payout number 1 final, Maneval Construction Company Incorporated, district-wide asphalt paving 2023. Payout number 13, FH Passion, SN Nielsen and Associates LLC, McCollum Park Sprayground and Tennis Improvements, and payout number 24, Hitchcock Design Incorporated, McCollum Park Sprayground Design.
Any question on the consent agenda items?
No questions, Mr. President.
Take care, make a motion.
I'll move for the adoption of the consent agenda as read into the record.
Second.
Any further discussion? As for roll call then?
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Kattula.
Aye.
We'll be here in 5 minutes.
Moving along to board business, president comments. Just been a busy, I just wanted to say it's been a very busy time. Appreciate everyone's efforts. Made some notes about several items and going through the last month, I the notes throughout things, and I'll make comments as we go through all the staff reports. We're looking forward to that portion as well. So, do any other commissioners have comments?
Congratulations to the museum staff. I was able to attend the I don't know.
Pathway to Freedom.
Or, pardon me?
Pathway to Freedom.
Pathway, no, I was gonna say, was it it was an introduction, right? Or acceptance of the
Acceptance.
acceptance of it. It was excellent work by the museum staff, and congratulations to their hard work and dedication. And so excellent turnout, really good event, and Dave was there, and so congratulations to once again a good job.
I won't wait for staff reports. That's what I was going to mention as well. But yeah, congratulations to all. So, thank you for the- Move along then to staff reports. Let's go ahead and go with the recreation report.
So for tonight, since we have such a busy meeting, we're just going to present staff committee reports as presented. If there's any questions from the board, we welcome those and we can answer those for the board.
I have no questions. I read the material.
Thank you.
No, we'll have some.
move along to new, no unfinished business, we'll move on to new business, the 2024 capital fitness golf analysis fee discussion and budget.
I will kick this off. Thank you very much. Tonight, we're going to start with the proposed 2024 fitness and golf budgets, followed by Paul presenting the capital presentation and the ADA discussion. So I will pull up my PowerPoint. Just give me one moment, please. Thank you. So tonight's presentation, we'll start with the staff's 2024 4,500 fitness budget presentation. This is tentative. We look for any additional direction or information from the board. And we'll kick it off with just a little bit of background information. This starts with some consensus that we're seeking tonight. The first of these is we're asking the board to give us consensus on the direction taken with the overall budget, with any updates to the fee structure, and with continuing the 5-year cardio lease schedule. This will all be rediscussed at the very end of this conversation so that we can get any feedback from the board. The themes you're going to hear tonight are 4 different items, 2 of them being told various times. The first one is we've had strong member growth throughout the year. We are going to be up to about 80% of 2019 levels by the end of the year, and we expect to see growth continue in 2024 and 2025. The second one is that with rising costs, we are recommending fee adjustments for 2024. We are looking from input for the board on that and the direction that they seek to take for the 2024 fiscal year. The third item is the addition of a part-time customer service focused individual that would help fitness upstairs. And the final item I've already previously mentioned is that there's been strong wage and inflationary pressures district-wide. This is throughout the industry and much of the nation over the last couple of years. Starting off with the tax levy and budget timeline. This process started back in late June, and until about early August, staff was going through the budget, adding all their items. This then went to a director review, and now we sit at the board meetings. This will be 3 meetings tonight for the fitness, for the golf, and for the capital. The next meeting will be the overall budget and the tax levy, followed by the second meeting in October, where everything is approved for public viewing. We will then have the appropriate public hearings, and final approval will be in December, so they can all be filed appropriately with the county clerk by the end of that month. This first document up on the screen is really a high-level analysis of the overall 3 years and assumptions that are made within this budget. So for 2023 projections, we're using data through July 1st. We periodically update this, but we try to get a set 6 months. And since we start this process at the end of June, early July, that is the most advanced month that we have full data on. So far, we've seen overall demand and revenues grow during the first 6 months, and we do project that to continue throughout the year. There's been no data so far that has showed us any slowing of this. So far, our members seem happy, they seem content, and we continue to add members at the fitness facility. As I mentioned, there's upward pressure on expenses, but throughout all of that, we've had some major updates, including new strength equipment, cardio equipment, a new HVAC on this building, and an updated roof. Our revenue performance this year is summarized at about 20% or 141,000 over budget. What happened? We did have a conservative budget as to how many members would be added back on throughout the year, and we have exceeded that. Finally, we will return to full funding of all direct and indirect expenditures this year. There will also be enough money for a capital contribution from 4,500 Fitness. For the 2024 budget, staff recommends an approximate 10% increase to membership rates. This would be the first increase since 2019. This translates to about $3 per standard membership each month. Budgeting for membership to reach 90% of pre-pandemic levels, followed by 100% in 2025. Operating expenses are growing at a faster percentage than revenues. However, the dollar amount remains less. This is largely from wages, inflation, and overall coming back from the pandemic. We're continuing to strongly invest in the fitness facility, even as revenues have been slower to recover. Finally, we're going to maintain the 5 cardio leases and 1 strength equipment lease to own that we utilized for equipment in 2024. 2025 is simply an estimate. There's no formal budget. This is for planning purposes. We expect expenses to slow with inflation. There's no budgeted or proposed membership increase to rates, and we would maintain the cardio and strength equipment leases. So this first page is the only one for fitness that has a lot of numbers on it. This is a summary of the overall budget. As we can see from this document, we show data from 2019 through 2022 that are historic, this year's budget and projections, along with a budget and an estimate for the future. We did this so we could show how the fitness center was performing prior to the pandemic, and then going forward with our best projections and estimates. On this side, we see that the budget performance has been strong this year. We're 20% above budget projections on revenue, along with about 25% under on expenses. As I mentioned, we'll finish the year with a positive amount in our fitness margin, even when accounting for expenses from the facility. When I say facility, what I mean is the rec facility houses many different athletic events, different programming opportunities throughout. So what we do is we allocate a percentage of that expense to the overall fitness operation. This is an indirect expense. We calculate this based on the amount of revenue earned throughout the fitness center and the rec center. As fitness brings in about 60% of the revenue, we allocate about 60% of the expenses from the facility to fitness. This is a quick way to do it. It is a very easy way that doesn't take a lot of staff hours. Otherwise, we'd have to try to calculate the exact usage of every room by each sport, by each activity. So at year end, we expect to have about $133,000 that can go towards other overhead costs of the overall operation of the district and capital. Next year, this will improve based on the budgeted assumptions we talked about. We would see about $150,000 increase in revenue with only about $56,000 in expenses. This would allow about $200,000 then to go to capital and to other overhead expenses. This would be a strong investment back into the facility, back into the overhead of the park district. Finally, 2025, I'm not going to talk a lot about that tonight. It's here for planning purposes, but it does show that this would perform much the same way as 2024. This first chart I would call the key performance indicator for the fitness facility. It shows annual revenues and average monthly members. Couple things to take into account when looking at this is that walking memberships have been added since 2019. So that wasn't included in memberships when they were at 3,823. And insurance memberships is one of the fastest growing segments within the industry. As you can see, 2023 is projected to show a strong increase in revenue and members. This performance would propel us up to about 80% of the revenue pre-pandemic. And it shows more members than pre-pandemic, but keep in mind, this includes about 1,200 walking members that were not existent back then. For our 2024 and 2025 budgets, we would show 10% annual demand increase each year to bring us back up to 100% by 2025. And currently, depending on the board's consensus tonight, we're showing a membership increase for the 2024 budget year. That membership increase plus reaching 90% of pre-pandemic numbers would bring us almost equivalent to the revenues that were generated pre-pandemic. A little bit more analysis into the revenues of fitness, whereas our overall budget sees about 8 categories. This is only 2, primarily charges for services. Tax revenues are not a direct revenue for fitness. They're not used to fund the fitness facility itself. However, tax revenues are used for the general upkeep of this building. which houses 4,500 Fitness. So upkeep, capital, and maintenance of the rec center, those would use taxes. On the non-tax revenue side, for standard membership first, we're at about 80% this year of membership revenues for the year, driven by membership growth. This would propel us to about 98%, as I showed on the graph, almost where we were pre-pandemic, if we make the adjustments for 2024. Other fitness revenues. Our group exercise classes are the slowest to return. Those are at currently 75% of 2019 levels. We budget them to increase to about 83% next year. We're finding that to be the most difficult category to rebound from the pandemic. This is also a very competitive category. There's a lot of ability out there for people to go to specialty facilities, along with a lot of at-home stuff that people found more comfort with during the pandemic. On the other side, personal training remains strong. We're at record levels. We do budget for this to continue in 24 and 25. We believe that this is for a couple reasons. We have a lot of offerings and we have a lot of staff for this. And by a lot, I mean, I believe 4 or 5 individuals. We go back to 2019, there weren't as many individuals with as much flexibility with the time schedule. In addition, we've seen in the industry more people gravitating towards personal training. Overall, the walking track continues to gain members. We're at about 1,200 the last time I looked. This should go up as we approach the winter months. This graph shows a division of where we get our revenues from for the 4,500 Fitness facility. As you can see, the gray section is our standard membership. That has and continues to be our largest area. But the trends that we're seeing, which I've previously mentioned, our insurance members and personal training are up, whereas group exercise continues to be the slowest to return. I would say that for a facility of our type, this is probably a pretty standard metric in comparison. Overall memberships are tracking strong. We have 5 different areas here. You'll see the top one, 2019. We were tracking around 4,000 members. This does not take into account walking memberships, so it's a better comparison. And then in about June of 2020, everything started going down. Why so late? For 3 months, we held members frozen. We did not ask them to cancel. We did not ask them to pay anything. We were waiting to see how the pandemic would transpire. At that time, we opened up the ability to come back to the gym under certain standards or cancel the membership. And we did see a lot of cancellations. As you can see, it's taken 3 years to really get back to where we are now. That's the red area. We are in the middle now. We do believe this will continue to grow and that we have strength going into the busy season. How are we achieving this growth? We're achieving it through very strong marketing sources. We're going to various platforms to try to get members. We're getting strong word of mouth based on the improvements we've been making. This includes all new equipment, cross promotion in our other programming, cleanliness of the facility, and our strength of our insurance memberships. Not every place offers insurance members the ability to join. However, that is the way the industry is going, and that has been a very strong component for us. Membership rates. This shows a diagram that shows our various membership rates. Believe it or not, this was much more complicated years ago. This is the simplified version. We have an annual membership and a monthly membership. We do give a discount if you pay for this annually. Currently in 2023, you'll see our rates in this column right here where I'm moving my arrow. So the standard membership for an annual member is $297. It's about $27 a month. We're proposing to bring this up to $327. That's about $30 increase. These other memberships below it, which are the additional member, student, senior, military, and additional members, would go up a smaller amount, but about 10% across the board. Enrollment fees would not change at $30, and we do have promotions throughout the year to bring in additional members where that amount is reduced or eliminated. The resident monthly membership would change very much the same, just at higher levels as they are paying month to month, so they get that flexibility to add and drop it more real time. So in comparison to some other community park district facilities. We changed this up a little bit, looked for facilities that we felt were close. However, there are very different offerings out there, so it's difficult to hit anyone on the head. What we have on here is in gray and blue. I've outlined them in white, a little harder to see from a distance. Those are what we're currently at and what we're proposing. Green is Woodridge. This mustardy color is Naperville. The difference there is everyone pays for group fitness. So they have one fee. You get group fitness, the basic classes, not the premier, and you get access to their membership. Our membership is you get access to the gym and walking track, and it's separate if you want group fitness. The final one is Elmhurst, which is actually a place that Dave used to work. He said it is a very comparable facility. The only difference is they do have a small lap pool. So when we look at this, we tend to see, I'll go to the individual member because this is the majority of ours, that currently we're about where Woodridge is with the other two locations higher than us. This would bring us up higher than Woodridge, but keep us below the other two. You can see from the other categories, this is quite similar. Those that are not as similar would be our gold memberships due to our group fitness. And that partly resides in the different way that we operate this facility, where not all members are paying for group fitness. Getting into operating expenses, as these are a small dollar amount compared to many other areas, I lumped them all into one. I'm just speaking about some of the major changes for 2024. As you can see, it would be about $56,000 of additional expenditures, with the majority of it coming from salaries. That's about $40,000. What's the reason here? Number one is we're filling open positions. Currently, we're just hiring now. We'll have someone starting very soon for our fitness supervisor position. In addition, we've had other open positions throughout the year. Currently, we staff one full-time and the remainder are part-time positions. On the professional consultant side, it's a high percentage, smaller dollar amount. This does look large. It's two things that are driving this cost. The first one is instructional services. Specifically for our premier classes, there's instructional services that you have to hire out to get the licenses and such for these. And those costs have been going up. An example of this is our Hit to Fit classes. The second cost driving this up is preventative maintenance. Industry standard is 1 to 2 times a year. What Dave and his staff would like to see is us going more towards that 2 times a year. That would be the more of the preferred standard for us. That would keep the equipment in better shape and hopefully allow it to last longer for our participants. Finally, supplies and materials. This is an area across the board throughout the park district. We're seeing costs go up, especially more recently. What you'll see in tonight's presentation and on the next meeting is that we've had some trailing costs when it comes to inflation. The park district has a lot of contracts, whether they be our own contracts or co-ops, that allow us to get favorable pricing. As those contracts end, we're getting hit more and more with some of the inflationary costs. So in 2024, we're seeing those costs increase. Plus, we've used up a lot of our supplies this year. One of our avenues to try to conserve on expenses this year has been trying to use up supplies. And with this being a transitional year for the fitness facility, changing to a new supervisor, we want to give them a little flexibility too on picking out what they want to use, what they feel is good standards to move forward with our materials and supplies. Maintenance and repairs and also improvements I've separated. These are affectionately known as maintenance, repairs, replacements, MR&R. These are all the small things that we do around this facility that give it that extra edge, that keep it nice for our members. They're not always noticed, but they're very, very important. We have seen repairs go up somewhat in recent years. Even with us replacing stuff, a lot of that is the cost from the individual services to repair it. I do plan on moving preventative maintenance here in future years. That's been contractual services. I do think it would be better placed here because it then offsets the equipment in the other category. As I mentioned, our improvements, currently we're maintaining 5 cardio leases. That has been the opinion of the board in previous years to do leases for the cardio. This is 5-year leases, 5 of them. That way we're consistently replacing the equipment once every 5 years. How did we pick 5? That tended to be an industry standard that we've talked with former supervisors about of how long that equipment will stay in good condition and also relevant as technology improves. For the first time since the beginning of the fitness center, we replaced strength equipment this year. That is on a 5-year lease to own agreement. So we'll pay it for 5 years and then it'll be ours to own. The margins and facilities I've talked about a little bit as to why we do this. What are our goals? The first goal is always to minimally cover direct expenses and facility costs. Direct expenses are specifically for the fitness facility, whereas the facility costs are the rec building. That's that percentage I had spoken about. Our additional goal would be to generate enough dollars. That fitness is also contributing to the overall overhead of the park district. Executive positions, park positions that might help with the facilities and such, along with any capital needs. There are a lot of capital needs for this facility. Just in the last year, the HVAC was about $1 million and the coating of the roof was another 200,000. So we don't have a complete transaction of, okay, it has to be this amount, but that is our goal every year to have an amount going towards that. That concludes the fitness aspect of this presentation. I tried to keep it simple. You do have a more expansive document. I believe it's 15, 16 pages in your board reports. At this time, we're looking for any questions the board has, any clarification, and then consensus from the 3 items that we mentioned here on this final slide.
I had a couple of questions. The only thing that I was concerned about, I brought them up, was the wanting to know if it's possible to hold off on increasing the senior membership. Having that remain the same because of, inflation, and that would be, there's a lot of seniors that use our facility. And if that was a possibility, I know we're gonna have more discussion. This isn't the final.
No, this is just direction, and then staff will take the direction tonight, rework the budget on anything, and then present it again to you.
That was the only concern. And if staff can make that a consideration and moving forward, and also with the first responder classification of membership for the fitness.
Yeah, let me take both a little separately. On the senior side, built into the system is already the discount that they're already receiving in there. And one of our concerns with not keeping up with the inflation is eventually we're gonna have to bump that up. And at that time, it would be even more than it would be if we kept up with inflation now. So the system already has that discount. And so our concern would be is freezing that discount, and the spread between the senior rate and the regular rate is going to grow. And at some point, we're going to have to close that gap. So that would be our only concern with that, along with the budget, just from the revenue side. But if the board's direction is to freeze the senior rate, we can rework the budget and make that work. I think we just, going forward, need to keep that in mind that we're increasing that spread between the two. So, and then secondly, with the first responders and giving them the discount, we can certainly do that. Actually, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I personally reached out when we started our Hometown Heroes program with CSPAR, and that was returning vets with disabilities. And we were able to get them into the fitness center for free, and we were able to get them classes as well. And at the time, we thought, hey, let's talk about our first responders. Their response really was that they all have fitness centers within the police department, the fire department, and they really didn't need it. So that's why we didn't offer it. We could put it out there. I just don't think anybody's going to use it, simply because that was the feedback we got before, but I can check again. So,
But it'd be nice for other, like I see a couple of DuPage County Sheriff squads that, obviously they live in Downers Grove, or even firefighters, or even 911 operators. It'd be nice to at least have the option.
like I said, we looked at that. So we're not opposed to that at all. So we can throw it out there. We just didn't do it because the response I got was, hey, thanks, but we've got our own stuff. So
you did a great job putting this presentation together.
appreciate it.
And that was an excellent for you, the entire staff. That was my only concerns that I had with the senior rate.
Any idea exactly how many senior memberships you do sell?
Yes, I have that info. So, right, this might help the board. So, right now we have 1,605 total senior members. Of that, 1,075 are the insurance members. And when we say insurance members, what we're referring to is Silver Sneakers, Silver and Fit, Renew Active, where the patron, we don't get any money from the patron for those programs. We get the money from the insurance company. So it's, they pay a higher premium or they get a discount by going, and it's based on usage. So that means we have what we consider full price members, those that are just regular members. We have a total of 530. And of that 530, there are 110 additional members. So maybe it's a husband and a wife where the husband pays full price and then the spouse or the other is getting a reduced rate. So that they actually get the senior rate. And then they further get another reduction on the additional member.
So up here, it's shown this year as 231 for the first member, 143 for the second. Go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry.
So 70% of our senior members are the insurance members. And as Bill mentioned, the equity, but we calculated if we kept the fees the same without increasing them, it's about 11, it would be we'd have to adjust about a little over $11,000 down in the budget that you have presented there before you.
Okay, so the estimated cost, if we're to freeze seniors, is $11,000 to the overall budget.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
It just kind of echoes Bill's point on that. I have seen those programs that want to freeze for seniors, and eventually you have to jump, and it's a shock to the system that happens. So there is risk to freezing those rates.
And we have some, it's old history now, but history within the district where we had frozen and the quality of the program had gotten frankly so bad, they were making crafts with toilet paper. I'm not making that up. That's literally what was going on. And it took us about 4 to 5 years to bring those fees in line back to where they needed to be so that we could provide the service we're doing. So that's where we get a little hesitant, and it's nice to freeze the stuff, but we always kind of have to weigh against that.
And then 11,000 in the overall budget is that much of a shock overall.
No, I mean, it would come out of the fitness budget.
Yeah. It's just something I'd like to consider, especially with the rate of inflation that, it's impacted the senior community a lot.
And then the other piece of information, Eric and I estimated that, over the last 4 or 5 years, since we replaced virtually every piece of equipment in the fitness center, it's probably cost us about $500,000 to do that, but we've had no fee increases since 2019. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, I just go down the list there. For me, with what you presented, I would have concurrence on direction with the budget. I would have concurrence on the fee structure proposed and then keeping the 5-year, 4-year leases. Been part of the past boards that have done that, so. And when it comes to the senior thing, it's not the $11,000 this year, it's right, it's the expenses get more next year and the expenses are more that year, and all of a sudden you get a pretty yawning gap, and it's in 2025 that you start getting concerned about gap in revenues. But so consensus on what you presented.
Yes. Anything else from anyone?
One other thing I'd just like to throw out, in terms of maybe a proposal for idea, if we're just thinking here about, the track memberships, they pay $5 for the year
For a resident,
for a resident. I don't know how many of those might be insurance membership eligible. I thought about maybe doing a promotion that here, rather than paying $5 out of your pocket, go to your insurance company, pay nothing. Not only for that $5, but maybe they might take advantage of further fitness center. I don't know. I see a lot of people on the track, probably just kind of walkers, but some people may be interested. I see a lot of people also are probably insurance eligible members that are on the track that might take advantage of that fitness center as well. If they knew about it, they knew
Yeah.
about that they're insured.
Yeah, we can certainly put that together.
Cross promoted.
The feedback we've gotten in the past has been, it's pretty much those that want to use the track. That's really their main interest. They don't have a desire to go into the fitness center, but again, we can make it available so they have
We have
the,
1,200 people.
they have the option of seeing what's out there. So.
So from how I understand tonight, we have concurrence on the overall budget. There are some concerns on the fees for the senior. That would be the one area of the fee adjustment that two of the three of you have
Correct.
concerns on.
Sandra.
Sandra, did you have any comments that you wanted to add?
I did. I just had a question and I might have missed it. When was the last time that there was a fee increase?
It was in 2019. At that time, we actually adjusted both annual and monthly members with one going up and one going down. So that was the last increase, 2019. So it'll be 5 years ago when this budget starts.
And what was the dollar amount for that increase and decrease?
I can go back and show you. 1 second.
There was in addition to the increase and decrease, there was also, we consolidated. As Eric mentioned earlier, there was all kinds of versions of different kind of memberships you could get.
Right.
And so we made it much more simplistic. That occurred at the same time.
To keep this simple, I'll look at it from an individual. An individual annual member went down $9 from 306 to 297. An individual monthly member went up from 306 to 324, so up $18.
Okay,
So,
all right. Okay, thank you for the clarification. I was, so as far as my concurrence on those three items, I concur. And, you know, I hear the concern about, senior rates, but I also understand, you know, if you build too much of a gap, then that's a hard thing when that price goes up significantly. So I understand the question, but I also understand that it might make sense to gradually increase everything. And especially hearing that 70% of the memberships, the senior memberships, are paid for by insurance. That's not necessarily a direct hit to the seniors individually, which is good.
And those that are paying the full rate do have the option to have the insurance program too. So
Okay,
they have that option. They're just not locked into that fee.
okay, all right. So,
And I did just check with Dawn to make sure we do advertise that pretty significantly, and Dawn assures me we do. So,
Okay.
you know, that's something we are telling seniors. So, you know, they're making that choice for that fee.
okay, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's everything we need at this time. I will proceed to the golf budget if everybody's ready. So for the golf,
Move on and just, I will reach out again, to the first responder stuff. It doesn't have an impact on the budget. It's kind of a non-budget thing, but I will reach out again and see.
If we can just add that class membership, because it would be nice to have that option for the people.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. Yeah.
thank you. Belmont Golf Club 2024, what can I say? It's been a good year. I think Ken is quite tired at this point in time. We're hoping he'll be quite tired for another month or two. Sorry, Ken. Very much like the last presentation, we're looking for the same concurrence from the board. We're looking for concurrence on the direction, on updates to the fee structure, and on our capital plan. Themes are very similar. We have strong demand. In 24 and 25, we are offsetting some of these revenues by a weather adjustment. The past 2 to 3 years, weather has been beyond ideal. Recommended fee adjustments in 2024 are proposed. An addition of a part-time assistant manager position and strong wage and inflationary pressures. Like fitness, the budget was projected for 2023 based on July 1st numbers. Overall demand and revenues grew throughout the first 6 months. There are upward pressures on the same expenses, and our major updates have been a historic display in the clubhouse, restrooms, bunker improvements, a pergola, a lit path range, a rough mower, and maybe a historic clock. Are we there yet?
Shipped on Monday.
What year?
What we're projecting for revenue performance is 16% or $275,000 over budget due to the ideal weather and continued demand. T-sheets, from what Ken has explained many a times, will fill up 7 days in advance. We do budget conservatively based on ideal weather that we've seen from averages. When that goes above and beyond, as you'll see on one of our charts, it nets us out a little bit more revenue. For 2024, our staff recommendations would be $2 a round increase and $1 a bucket of balls. This is approximately 8 to 10%. It's very similar to what we're proposing in other programs and fitness. Budgeted for a small revenue change only about 1% next year, and that's because of the weather adjustment. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Operating expenses are growing faster than revenues, very much like the fitness items. And our capital is about $310,000. This is about double what we were doing. That's for bunker improvements, clubhouse door replacement, vehicles and equipment, and planning costs towards an irrigation system. 2025 is an estimate. We kept things fairly flat. This would be the year that we potentially look into dynamic pricing and or electric carts. So even for proposal on fees, we made none. Operating expenses will slow, hopefully with inflation. We've been seeing inflation slow throughout the year at the federal level, even if it's not necessarily at our level yet. And the capital includes bunker improvements, range target renovation, irrigation pond dredging, car charging station, and vehicles and equipment. We are proposing to put money aside for the irrigation system since we don't have hard numbers from a date or from a financial perspective. It's not actually in the budget, it's just set aside. Here's that large number document once again. I'm just going to point out a couple highlights. Goes back to 2019. We can see revenues have gone from 1.1 million in 2019 to projected, 2 million. Bill and I keep fighting and arguing about this. Are we going to make it? Are we not? It all depends on how long this season lasts for us. If it lasts in October, early November, I'd put our probability up over 90% that we could reach 90%. We could reach $2 million. As you can see, we kind of budget this very similar for the future. On the expense side, we try our hardest to keep expenses down. We're going to be at about 1.3 million this year for expenses. That would go up the next 2 years, but as you can see, the increase is primarily 2024. We actually believe we can bring it down a little bit in 2025 with some changes we can do. And that's primarily on the maintenance and replacement side. This would cover our capital needs. So about 391,000 this year of capital and transfers out. Next year, that'd be 310,000 with a $90,000 transfer for mini golf. If you remember, we discussed $180,000 of improvements over the next 3 years at mini golf, sponsored by Belmont Golf Club. And then in 2025, much the same. This bottom part is what I want to bring your attention to. So our full fund balance is sitting at about 1.8 million for this fund, whereas expenses are only projected at about 1.4. The policy for us, which is an industry standard and a strong policy, is about 4 to 6 months of operating expenses. Try to keep a little bit above this just because weather can have such an impact on this fund. With that thought in mind, we've been gathering fund balance over the recent years. We also knew that there was going to be some big capital coming up in the coming years. This irrigation project is coming upon us quicker than we had planned. We had planned 27, 28. Now it's looking more like 2025. So what we're asking to do is in this category on the bottom called assigned for irrigation system. At the end of this year, we want to set $1 million of the fund balance. That would still leave almost 800,000, which is more than a half a year of expenses. This $1 million would be our first chance to set aside money for that system. Assignment just sets it aside. If a board in the future decides they want to change that, they always can. That's not difficult. Then each of the next years, we've actually built in to where the fund balance goes up so that we can maintain our overall fund balance for 6-month policy as expenses increase. while setting more money aside. My forecast that would be by 2025, we could have at least 1.3 million set aside for the irrigation system. With costs projected at $1.5 million to 2 million, this would be a large chunk and would hopefully allow us not to have to go out to debt unless that was the board's wishes. Our golf course performance indicators. This is total rounds, total buckets, total revenue. Everything's up. What we're seeing this year is about a 5% gain in buckets of balls and rounds, even with price increases for the year. And our total revenue, as I mentioned, will be up this year. Even if it doesn't hit 2 million, it will exceed 1.9. For 2024 and 2025, you can see that we slightly adjust rounds and buckets back down. About 10% for rounds, 5% for buckets. Weather affects rounds more than buckets because of our covered range. That's the reason for the difference there. We also try to keep revenues conservative, and we can exceed those revenues, additional money towards the irrigation system. You'll see in here a 5-year capital plan for the golf course. We continue to grow that, make it more in detail as we have with the district-wide assets. One of our main metrics is our total revenues per round. What we've looked at over the last 10 years primarily is that a lot of golf courses historically were just looking at their greens fees. But the golf course is a very large operation that has a lot of different revenues. It just doesn't have to all be on the green fees. So we've really concentrated on that. We've looked at merchandise, we've looked at concessions. Obviously, we've looked at the range by the numbers we've seen and our programming. And we've found different avenues to bring in additional dollars so that we can continue to plus this course. It's a 130-year-old course. We want to keep it in as pristine condition as we can. So what you'll see over these years is that we continue to grow this total revenues per round. However, we haven't made the course unattainable, not from a price standpoint, not from a field standpoint. Prices remain very competitive with surrounding courses that offer a similar experience. Here's what I mean by ideal weather days. So in white, you'll see 2023 with 4 years of previous history. When we get into April, May, and June, we've had some very strong weather. I can't say that for September with the last week of rain, but believe it or not, even with that rain, it amazes me what I still see for revenues coming in. Ken and his staff deserve a lot of credit for that. Just through June, we had 76 ideal days. What is this? Highs between 50 and 90 degrees and less than a 1/10 of an inch of rain. That's no standard for nationwide or anything. That's something we developed here to just try to measure how's weather doing, because it's impossible if you're looking at all these numbers and don't have a standard. So we were at 76 for this year. We average about 65, looking back about 5 to 8 years. Here is the overall membership rate structure. As I had said, this hasn't become, even through growing our revenues, it's not become unattainable. What we're proposing, so in 2023, our resident rates are $22 and $24. 22 for weekday, 24 for weekends. And we price our non-resident about $4 higher. There's senior junior discounts, specifically on weekdays. There's replay discounts if you want to play twice the same day. And there are twilight discounts. Next year, we're proposing the $2 increase. So that would put our residents at about $24 and $26 and non-residents at 28 to 30. As I said, those discounts would still be in place for seniors, juniors, replay, and twilight. Our pass structure, we did stop this last year, if you recall. The board approved that we would no longer offer new passes. We grandfather the old passes in. We seek to continue this. Those passes would adjust at about the same rate as regular holes, regular greens fees, about 8 to 10%. Motorized carts, poke carts would stay the same, and our buckets of balls would go up about $1. Here's the comparison with other courses. We are showing Lockport's Prairie Bluff, Oak Brook, Naperville, which I believe is their Springbrook location, Arrowhead, Lyle, and the Links of Glen Ellen. Currently in gray, our park district stands, where Belmont Golf Club stands. White is where these rate increases would bring us up to. And as you can see, for the most part, we remain, I would say, in the bottom third of our comparables from a fee standpoint. Very accessible to the community. very accessible to those outside of the community. And we do get demand from both sides. And we've even seen more people coming here for historic purposes. I believe somebody was just telling me, I don't know if it's Ken or Dave or whom it was, that we had a local ladies league that plays elsewhere that's been in existence for 100 years. They wanted to do their last round of the season here because it's the oldest course around. That was kind of a gratifying fact for us.
These are all based on like a 9-hole? Some of those courses are 18.
These are all 9-hole.
Oh, Arrowhead's 9 holes?
You can golf nine.
Oh, the 9-hole.
Yeah, so what we determined a number of years ago is that our course plays more like a front or a back 9 than a par 3 9-hole course. So everything is 9-hole based, including the cart rentals.
So we converted. We used to be comparing like against Ziegfeld, Troy and that, and they're just two different products and that just wasn't a fair comparison.
So our range, this has been a success story of in and of itself. As I had stated, this would bring in about $160,000 of revenue, probably about 1 million range balls. By the end of 2023, we project about 2.5 million range balls and about $410,000 of revenue. With the increases proposed and the demand staying about the same, these numbers would not change drastically over the next 2 years. From a programming side, this is a little bit up or down. However, we've seen a lot of expansion during the pandemic. This was an outside athletic endeavor for people. So when it dipped last year, we weren't exactly surprised. There was more baseball, more softball, more soccer, more activities. We are seeing trends bringing it a little bit back up this year, and we have plans to bring it up even more next year. So what you can see from our categories, golf camps, adult lessons, youth lessons, they're all expected to be up this year. Next year, we are asking to add an assistant golf manager. This would be somebody from the PGA Academy. Is it called PGA Academy?
It'd be a PGA professional, so that person would help inside and take over an hourly part-time wage inside, and then also help out with lessons on the range. So it kind of help out in all areas, and then also help the camp and things along those lines. So it'd be a PGA member or a PGA knowledge of the.
With that being said, our current golf pros aren't planning on going anywhere. This would complement them. This would assist them. Because when you look at $180,000 of revenue bringing in, they're getting tired by the end of the season. So our hope is to add more classes, more programs, more ability at the same time. If you have a number of people that want 5 o'clock, hey, here's a third person that could teach. For merchandise and concession, another great graph to look at. This continues to grow. 2023 was our strongest year for pro shop sales. This is a combination of a few things. Number one, we were actually getting supplies in. That was a great plus. That was a start. Number two, Ken and his staff are picking out some great merchandise that is industry standards for golf that are hot in the demand. There's brands I don't even know of yet that he's bringing out that are very well known in the golf world. And then 3, the name change. That was huge for us. Everybody wanted their new Belmont gear. On the concession side, we attribute the gains to our clubhouse improvements. It's much more comfortable to sit around there. There's been a lot of money and time put into that. The pergola, everything's helping, and just continued demand. As you see more demand at the club, you're going to see more people sticking around. For 2024, we are bringing revenues down for Pro Shop from a budget standpoint. We feel that some of the glitz and glamour of the new name change wear off a bit. Everybody wanted to stock off on their shirts right away. We're hoping that we're being conservative, but you do not know. On the other side, concessions, we do budget for this to continue to grow. That environment continues to be better and better, and it's amazing what we've seen in the last 10 years from that standpoint. In addition, one thing that we did, and I know Dawn and I talked about this for concert too, is we looked at some local festivals and establishments as to what they're charging for craft beer. Currently, what we're seeing from Rotary in the downtown, from some of the bars in the downtown restaurants, about $7 for a beer. So the proposal for next year across the board would be to bring our beer and wine up to $7 for our events, for our golf course, for our concert series. That would net about $20,000 across the board for the park district, with some of that coming here for the golf course.
You just mean the good beer.
What's that?
You just mean the good beer.
Good beer.
I mean, for the $7, I was just saying that's not for all beers. That's just.
That's not for all beers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
$7 is a premium craft brew. You're talking a local craft like Alter. You're talking other crafts like, what are we serving right now?
And so right now we have Pop Browse or Oktoberfest, Surly is IPA is Furious, it's out of Minneapolis, that one's a popular one. We always keep Stella on because the Saturday Men's League seems to enjoy that quite a bit, and then Alter Centerline is
So
Yeah.
$7 beer craft beers.
Upping, but like, you know, like. So.
we do offer those are just offered in a 16-ounce can.
Thank you for catching that. On the operating expense side, personnel is our largest expense at the golf course. This is about 50% of our budget. What we're seeing is that expenses are going up. Minimum wage continues to climb. It'll be $14 next year. However, for most of our seasonal and part-time position, either the responsibility warrants more than that, or the demand for those select employees has grown so large that we often have to offer more. One thing we do have going for us at the golf course is the workers do get additional golf privileges, which helps us to get and retain part-time and seasonal people a lot easier. So that has been beneficial. What this would include, it would be up to a $1 increase for part-time, up to, and additional hours based on demand. Both Ken and Jeff have expressed that demand has been so great. And obviously this has become a trend. It's 3 years in a row that we do need to add some additional hours for help. We also want to hire that part-time assistant. And we'd like to maintain our 3 full-time position staffs and adjust them by the raise pool and any benefit changes. Utilities, this will be across the board. Utilities are growing in 2024. So a little bit of the story here. In 2022, natural gas was the first to go up considerably. 22 was a very volatile year for natural gas. We saw it more than double in the spring. By the summer, we were talking with our contractual company that helps us to go out for RFPs for this. And by fall, we had gotten a new natural gas contract. That did increase fees, but set a hard cap on what we could get charged in the future. At the same time, we discussed electricity. Electricity comes due this fall. That's when the 3-year contract ends. And the last fall, early winter, we had the board approve a contract for electricity rates to secure 3 years. It does include a portion of green energy. Those costs, though, have gone up about 40%. Nothing that we did. We simply scored a contract 3 years ago at some of the best rates that had been around for years. So that 40% is still better than what we could get elsewhere. This was competitively priced, but we're going to see those go up across the board. On the water and sewer side, there's not a lot of cost here. We use our irrigation ponds. On the telecom side, most of our telecom expenses, whether it be phones, whether it be internet, are just charged to our general fund. The other category I'm going to discuss is maintenance, repairs, and replacements. This is all of that small stuff I've talked about that makes us different, that makes us strong. We have done a better job of classifying these expenses over the years. We're also seeing additional maintenance and repairs due to aging assets. A lot of our equipment is getting older. One of the things is our irrigation system. It's about 20 years old. One of the reasons that we're asking for it to get moved up is we're seeing pipes break throughout it, probably 3 or 4 times a year at least. And we don't want that to be the big one that causes any damage. On the technology side over there, if that panel goes down, it would be very, very difficult to find any replacement parts. That's just one example. There's also various updates to small assets throughout the golf course. We budget certain dollar amounts for certain items planned in advance, but things do come up. So Ken and Jeff are given some flexibility there to move as they need on these projects. As I had stated, I already talked about all the things that we've done this year from a capital perspective. We are coming in under budget, which is always great to see. Next year, $310,000. So $20,000 for bunker improvements. This dollar amount has gone up, but what I want to keep mentioning is that Jeff and Brian do this in-house. So this is the cost of materials. Not all courses have that benefit, but Jeff has been able to do these bunker improvements for us in-house for a number of years now. The golf course door replacement, the $65,000 would replace the customer doors that we see around the building. Those doors are considerably old. and have experienced some problems over the years. So we want to make sure we get that so that we're securing the facility appropriately. The irrigation system, we have $75,000 here. That is more than what the board is voting on tonight for the initial consulting fees. This is for if other things come up, whether it be topographic cost or any other planning costs that are going to be part of the process. As Jeff has mentioned, it's a long 2-year process. We want to make sure we have enough set aside to do this right. Finally, the vehicles and equipment based on availability, I'll say that because Mike Stelter from the Parks Department recently drove out of state to get a vehicle. The staff would recommend the replacement of 2 John Deere vehicles and a case hit loader that is about $150,000. I should keep it in everyone's mind that prices have gone up considerably. Some of our basic commercial mowers for the golf course have gone from $30,000 to $47,000 over the last 3 to 5 years. Whereas some of the very big heavy duty ones were maybe $80,000, $90,000 a handful of years ago are up to $120,000, $130,000 now. So these costs are going up. With that, it takes us to the conclusion of my presentation. We'll take any questions, any clarifications, any topics you want to talk about, along with we're looking for concurrence from the board so that we can continue to move forward on the budget process.
I think the golf is pretty much straight away. It's a good presentation. I don't have any questions. I mean, it's like you're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
I don't have any reasons not concur with any of this. Presented.
Sandra, that leaves you. I know you can't see us.
But I can hear you. I have no questions and I do, agree with consensus to all 3 items.
Thank you very much. With that, that was the conclusion of my part of the budget presentation. I'll turn it over to Paul and he's going to go into capital and also into ADA.
Eric, I'm gonna share my screen if I can. This goes. Good evening. This evening, we're going to be presenting a list of proposed capital projects for next year for 2024. We'll give a little bit of background on each of the projects that we're proposing, as well as introducing the projects that we're currently projecting for fiscal year 2025. And then lastly, we also have a 5-year capital improvement plan to share as well at the end. So just getting into the projects that we're proposing for next year, starting with Constitution Park, the full park renovation. This is a project we've been talking about for a little bit with the grant applications that we submitted over a year ago, and then finally getting into planning work this year. But then the actual construction and spending of the money will be in fiscal year 2024. So this project, if you remember, has $600,000 of the overall $875,000 budget. I'm sorry, yeah, $600,000 of the overall budget is being funded with grants, the 2 grants that were secured on this project. So the Park District capital funds that we would be putting in the budget would be $275,000 towards this overall project. Just some highlights, as you may remember, the playground is going to be a larger expanded playground that will include, we'll have inclusive wheelchair accessible playground equipment and also synthetic turf play surfacing below the equipment. And we're adding new pathways and a new picnic shelter to the park as well. So that's one that we're working on final drawings right now to put it out to bid and then award to a contractor, hopefully by the end of this year, that then they can start in the spring as soon as the weather breaks and they can get in there and start working. We're also proposing for next year a couple of items for the administrative offices on Warrenville. The first of which is placement of the HVAC system. So this system was installed in 1996 and it includes a large rooftop unit, you can see on the bottom left there, a single rooftop unit, but it's a big one. As well as there are boilers, two good-sized boilers in the basement. We're hoping to look at a redesign of the system if possible. Kevin's already scheduled an appointment or a meeting with train representatives to look at options for if there are ways to redesign the system, just because we feel like the way it functions right now may not be the most efficient. Again, we'll need an HVAC professional to tell us if there are different ways of going about doing this. And then we will also be definitely updating the controls. The last couple of projects we've done, HVAC improvements, the Lincoln Center and the recreation here at the Recreation Center. We went to the new building automation system that has web-based controls, allows us greater control over areas and easier access to those controls to our staff. So that's about $300,000 we're projecting for the HVAC replacement. And I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along if there are any. Okay. Also at the administrative office, we're looking at the fire alarm panel out there. That again is also installed in 1996. That's when the building, our administrative office, was renovated for Park District offices. So that system is no longer supported. The brand of panel, the model that we have there is no longer supported. So we're not able to get replacement parts anymore. I think we have to get those off of eBay.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
When we need parts, we're going on eBay. And so we would change that to a Honeywell. We've been in the process of changing all of our fire panels over to a Honeywell brand system. So we want to have all of our systems match there. Budgeting $100,000 for the fire alarm panel, the admin offices. Next, we have a couple of playground replacements. So we're talking about Constitution Park playground, and overall park renovation would be a spring project. This would be likely in the fall, similar to other recent playground renovations we've done, where it's just kind of working within the existing footprint of the playground. We usually have a curb edge to the playground, so we're really just replacing everything inside of that curb edge. So this would be two of our older playgrounds now that we've got. Loy Park was installed in 1998 and Northside in 1999. So these two playgrounds are getting up there in age. I think Loy, I believe, is our oldest playground in the district, and definitely in need of replacement, the equipment itself. Typical life expectancy on playgrounds, industry standard would be 15 to 20 years on playground equipment. So these have outlived, have gone beyond that now. And in this case, we'd be looking at replacing the mulch surfacing with a poured in place rubber or a synthetic turf surfacing. And also include, when we do these projects, we typically include ADA improvements as needed to address any barriers that were identified in our ADA transition plan. So an example would be Northside Park, way at the north end of town. That one actually is one of our only playgrounds that doesn't have a hard surface walkway up to the playground. It's just turf, it's just lawn all the way up to it. And so there's not wheelchair access to that playground currently. And it's one of our only ones in the whole district. So we would add a sidewalk that would connect from the street, the village sidewalk on Bernard Avenue and Bernard Road up to the playground itself. So that's an example of an ADA improvement that we would do along with the playgrounds, with those playgrounds. So those we've got budgeted at $200,000 each for the play equipment replacement and surfacing of those. And then additional funds for any ADA improvements would be funded from our ADA improvement budget, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We also have for next year, we're proposing fencing at Fishel Park. So this would be to help us create dedicated entry points into the park for easier monitoring during large events. So we would have ornamental fencing, which is the example we have shown here on the screen would be what we would consider an ornamental metal fence, a little bit nicer looking metal fence. would be along the high visibility sides of the park, so along Grove Street. And also along the north edge by the church and anything along the alley, would have this more decorative fencing. Along the west edge where the taller condo building is located and there's a lot of vegetation, we would probably just do a black chain link fence. Because it's less visible along that to help save some cost. And then also looking at possibly adding a few of these stone columns, just decorative elements at the kind of at the corners or at the entry points of the park to kind of tie back to the pavilion, the limestone facade on the band shell.
Paul, you want this up and running by next concert season?
That would be our hope.
That would be our hope.
Which means that we're gonna need to get started on it fairly soon because it would be, again, given the dollar amount, it is something that will have to be put out for public bid. And also with lead time on, fabrication time of the fencing. We will be, if we get concurrence to go ahead with this project next year, I'll probably look at getting going on it this year and possibly even getting it out to bid by the end of the year. So that we can try to get it installed for the concert.
Does doing the ornamental fencing by the condo almost double the price of this?
It wouldn't double the price, but it is a fairly significant difference in cost.
Probably a third of cost. There's so much greenery there. I think why we were thinking doing the chain link there was cost, but it's also gonna kind of just disappear to the back. So
I
you
was
won't
thinking of
really
like
see
people
it.
living in the condo,
They're really not even gonna see it. There's so much vegetation through there. Now they poked a few holes through the vegetation to get into the park. They're gonna have to kind of go around now. They're gonna hardly see it there. Yeah.
There actually is a little bit of a chain link fence there now that
Right.
they had put up. Because people were cutting through their parking lot to get, through to the train and not.
And that's not black vinyl, so.
And it's just regular, the silver galvanized type that we would look at replacing.
Labor the point, but would you have the options of putting gates in there if the district decides to block that park, or is that also an option in your budget or no?
I'm trying to remember, we definitely had a couple of gates. Like for example, where the vendors come in, we'll have to have a double gate where they come in. I can't remember what we decided on the entrance points, if we wanted a gate.
No, the main entrances, we didn't have gates on them because we'll staff them when we want to control that.
So off of Grover.
Yeah, if we down the road have some problems, we could always add gates, but we thought they would just get in the way. We're gonna have to man those areas anyway.
But are you talking about like gates for like how people do come in on the other side of the park? And maybe when we're not having concerts, we leave that open. When we do have concerts, we lock that up.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
then we don't like lose access to the park, so they don't have to walk all the way around every
Correct.
time.
But what we
Is that
consider
what we consider?
the two main entrance points on either side of the band shell, we weren't looking at gates there. All the other access points that we would have open during non-concert, non-events, we would have gates on, but we would have them open during normal time.
People come in from the west.
Correct.
And
That
still
way,
not have to
that
walk
way
all
we
the way
don't have to
around.
man all those
Yeah.
access points and we can funnel people through the main ones.
We'll be selling or making tickets available that people would have to have a ticket to come into the concert center.
Dawn is still working on that.
Well, I guess my point would be if, or what I was going to ask them, so take it to the next level, if you don't sell out that night, you even have to staff the gates or.
But we would still staff them because it's an opportunity for us to control carry and alcohol.
People coming in too.
Yeah, and we wouldn't charge, but we may want to do some sort of reservation system, particularly on the nights that we know they're going to be really crowded. So that people aren't just getting turned away.
Yeah, but in my understanding, this is more about controlling the crowd, not controlling the access.
You are correct.
But, because, we want people walking around.
It allows us to stop letting people piling in.
Is this a 6 foot you're thinking or?
No, I think probably do a 4 foot. 6 foot, I think would get very, a very big visual barrier, make it feel very enclosed in the park that way. A 4 foot, I think would be fine to keep control of access. Any other questions on this particular? Next, we have at Gilbert Park, looking at replacing all of the asphalt surfaces. So this would be the parking lots. We have two parking lots at this park, one on the if cursor will work here. So one on the east side to the right here, and then another one kind of hidden in the trees in this picture, but it's here on the west side. The two parking lots at Gilbert Park both need to be resurfaced. And then also the pathways, which we have highlighted in blue on this map. There are quite a few asphalt pathways through Gilbert Park. And then finally the basketball court there that you see at the south end of this image. So the parking lots are due to be replaced. They were last renovated in 2004. We've been through our seal coating. We have in our maintenance repair and replacement budget. We do seal coat parking lots every 3 years. And we feel that helps us to be able to get 20-year life. We're trying to get 20 years out of our asphalt surfaces. So next year, with these parking lots 20 years old. And then the pathways in the basketball court are a little bit older than that. They don't see quite as much, vehicular traffic, obviously, but they are ready to be replaced. The pathway actually gets quite a bit of use from people walking on Gilbert because up here along the road, there's actually not sidewalk. It's too tight there. There wasn't space for a sidewalk. So this piece that comes through the park actually functions as the village sidewalk that connects to the sidewalks on Gilbert Avenue to the east there. And then this west parking lot also, some people do use it as kind of a north entrance to Maple Grove Forest Preserve because this pathway, the blue line you see down here, does go across a bridge then into the Forest Preserve. And there's no signage for the Forest Preserve at that location, but people who come here often know that that's an access point. So it does get some additional use for that as well. So that total project with all of those asphalt components with we're budgeting $175,000.
Are there any options about it, not for the east one, but for the west lot, anything about putting up parking lot lights or anything, or you're just resurfacing, correct?
Just resurfacing. There's a security light right now, if you're talking about the one by the Forest Preserve. Is that?
No, just the parking lot, just if there was any entertaining of putting up a lighting for that parking lot.
So right here, this being the west lot, there is a security light that we have there that actually puts quite a bit of light on the parking lot. It actually does light it fairly well. Just a single light, but it does provide quite a bit.
And this is just resurfacing. We're not making these McCollum-like nice. They're gonna stay narrow.
All the paths.
The pathways,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
Actually,
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, they may already be. Portions of it are already probably 8 feet wide. The part that comes up on the west side here is probably not. It's probably more like 6 feet wide, but that's kind of on the slope, and so it was kind of carved into the hillside.
Is there 8 feet wide?
The ones on the other side, I'm thinking the from the east parking lot coming down the hill might be wider, might be 8 feet wide already. But
Running over there, I think I'm close, and the person running the other way. And I noticed that it went to that blue line extends across the creek, right? We have got that like one, a 3 foot wide bridge there, 1 person wide bridge there.
right.
Does this mean we're doing anything to the bridge, or is that blue line just?
No, I think it was just showing where it goes, where it leads.
Okay.
So the bridge is actually Forest Preserve.
Oh, that's forced.
That's theirs.
Forest Preserve and Sanitary District, there's a sanitary line that runs underneath that bridge that needs to be replaced. So the Forest Preserve and the Sanitary District I believe they've started some initial engineering to replace that bridge.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that's been like that
Yeah.
since I've lived here. It's been a long time. I figured at some point they'd put a new bridge in.
Yeah.
It has to do with the sanitary that you mentioned it has to do with elevations, that sanitary line coming through there can't be raised at all, because it's gravity drain and so it's been a challenge, I think, finding another location for the bridge other than where it is now, and it stays there. It's how do you keep that sanitary connection while you're replacing the bridge? And so they've had some challenges, I think, working through that. So it's got a lot going on. You don't
In
see.
30 years, it's been the same.
Yes,
rate.
it's very expensive from what I understand, so.
Anything else, Gilbert? Any other questions? And then another one we put on here was at McCollum Park. So this is at the playground. Some of you may remember as part of the spray ground project, we had originally proposed a shelter to go. There's this plaza right here at the kind of at the north end of the playground. That we intended to put a shelter there as part of the project. It was one of the things that we did take out for cost savings. To get that project going. So we're hoping to put something back in there for shade. There are some trees in these planters that you see in the middle of the playground. But there's just a single tree in each of those planters. Does provide some shade for people, but as on a busy day with a lot of people there, there's not quite enough shade especially for spectators, parents and grandparents that maybe they're watching kids on the playground. So the intent was to have a shelter. We're putting $40,000 in the budget right now. That probably would not be enough to get a permanent shelter. So the bottom picture there in the middle is a permanent shelter. The other photo up top is of a shade structure. Those are a little less money to install, the purchase and install. But they also require more time and energy. Kevin's guys, those shade canopy pieces are fabric, and we wouldn't leave them up in the wintertime. So those are going to need to get taken off every fall, stored for the winter, and then put back up in the spring. This one I'm showing is a very nice looking one, but it's also a bit complex because there's multiple shade sails. And so our preference would be to do a permanent shelter, might be a little more money. So our thought is, Eric and I talking about this, that this could be a project for later in the year next year. We see how other projects are going, and if there are any efficiencies from other projects that if there's any other dollars available to put towards this, we might look at a permanent shelter here. So again, this would be one we would look at for probably, later in the year next year.
And we are getting quite a few requests from particularly the pickleball players to have some shade in that general area.
A couple other things that are in the capital budget. We've got the master plan update, which we are starting here in a few weeks, actually starting that process. So we've got part of that budgeted in 2023, the current year. And then part of it is also budgeted next year, expecting it to extend into next fiscal year. And then also part of that 91,000 there is also the Gelwick's Park feasibility study, which Bill's working on consultant selection for that. And then we've put money in for asphalt parking lot condition assessment. We did one of these in 2015. At that time, the village of Downers Grove was doing these assessments in-house, their public works department, and we were able to get assistance from them to have their staff actually go out and do an assessment of our parking lots, which was helped tremendously with us helping to be able to prioritize which parking lots need to be replaced. They've now switched to doing it third party. They don't do it in-house anymore. They're using a consultant. So we're proposing for our next one that we would hire a consultant to do that.
So consultant is village.
I need to find out. We'll probably get a price from the company that they're using. And then I've got another engineering firm that I've been talking to as well. So we'll get a couple of quotes for that. But it'll kind of go along with the master plan that, completing the master plan. We're looking at doing kind of long range infrastructure replacement plans. That this helps us with that to have a current assessment of the condition of those parking lots and then project out when they'll need to be replaced.
If I may interject, Paul, in addition to that, Paul and I, and also Bill, we spoke about the current rollover bond that we have. We issued for 2022 for the work at McCollum Park. That will come available again in 2028. It's paid off in 2027. So with the known ability to have that rollover bond continue and have more capital projects, it would be a good time. We had the facility analysis last year. This would update asphalt for us, and then we'd have our master plan.
Eric? And then just like to mention just other capital considerations. Within our capital budget, we have vehicles and equipment, which is Kevin, usually purchasing trucks and other large mowers and other large equipment. Budgeted at $250,000. It's been what we've had each year for a number of years. And then the ADA improvements, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, budgeted at $100,000 for improvements there. We typically put in the budget a contingency funds that for unforeseen conditions or things that may come up in any of those projects that I just presented. If something comes up that we need additional funds to have that available. And then was just going to mention, we do occasionally have developer donations when there are new condos or other developments in Downers Grove that are completed. Typically, we receive a cash in lieu of land donation, and we did get a small one this year. There's another one that we're anticipating next year. The developer's going through the permit review process at the village, and so we're kind of projecting that we'll see that. And Eric has proposed that as those funds come in, because we can't necessarily count on those for, budget purposes, but we just maybe put those into a fund for one of the big ones that we have coming up, which is the McCollum Playground. That's our largest playground. That's going to be a large capital project that we could put money, kind of like he's talking about doing for the golf course irrigation. A similar thing that if we get developer donation, we can put it into a fund for that McCollum Playground.
These are a little different than just general revenue funds. The city has requirements for them. As developers come in and add to the village, these funds come in for the schools, for the park district, and they're to be used really for two purposes. Number one, for that neighborhood to help it since it's going to have additional residents, or for projects that are going to impact the overall community. And since McCollum's our flagship park, we've done all these improvements and new playgrounds coming up. That playground's going to be $500,000 plus. This would be a good avenue to start funding it in a couple of years.
We're thinking when we do McCollum, that makes sense for that to be a flagship piece of playground equipment. Probably a lot more height than we have now, a lot more interaction, and just the cost would be expensive there, but because that's going to be such a gathering place, I think it makes sense for us to have that signature piece in that playground.
Every time we do a playground lately, we get kids that ask for a track ride. They've got these long track rides now on some playgrounds, but you need a lot of space for those. And McCollum's one where we actually have in the bigger side, we have a lot of space there that we could do something fun.
Look like a lot of fun.
They do.
I took my niece to one, and for an hour, constant line. You could not just get on it and ride it. It was the one thing Paul does not have in here. He's done a great job picking stuff out. We do not have a land contingency currently in the budget for 2025 or 2024. We have been purchasing a lot of land over recent years. However, we also know we need to focus on a lot of these facility playgrounds, parking lots, all these other projects. So that land was not placed in there as a contingency at this time.
But Paul, earlier detected I had a question when we were talking about the administration building. And I know we still don't know the exact timeline for moving on to no building, but it seems like a lot of money to be spending on a building that somebody else might come in and knock.
Right.
Is this just the only plan to keep this thing going? Because it could be another year or two.
Correct. It's going to be another year or two unless something miraculously falls into place. I can tell you that air conditioning unit,
It's on its last leg.
there's someone on that roof
Yeah.
like every single week trying to keep that thing running. That's the problem, is we got to the point where eventually it's just going to fail. So we're going to have to put that in. We got a lot of possibilities with the admin center, and one of them being, if we can't find another location for maintenance, is turning the old admin side into its own suite and then rent that out. So we would need to have that air conditioning and life safety stuff up to date anyway. I think also selling it.
But so I would wonder what the estimate is, like if we invest this now, we want to sell it later. I mean, I think somebody might want to destroy the building, but like, how much will that increase the sale price, right?
It's certainly going to help, particularly if somebody's going to use it for office space. They're going to want to know what the life of that is and what the cost is to replace it. And if that thing is held together by bubble gum, which is what it is, you're going to get a discount on that.
Yeah, I guess just, yeah. No,
I know.
knowing what that difference is might just make it more comfortable to spend the money, knowing like, okay, we're gonna get $300,000 in this thing, but.
It is
to build
probably-
the 400.
It is probably the one line item on there that none of us want to do, but. Like I said, I don't know what you spend. I don't want to know what you spend.
Yeah, right.
There's someone on that, I'm not lying. There's someone on that roof all the time fixing that thing.
It's,
I kind of agree with Brett, that, you know, it'd be nice, and what if somebody bought it for a tear down?
Right.
You know, I agree with you, I mean, are we at that point where we have to look for a new administration building would be money well spent?
Well,
I'm kind of in concurrence with.
Yeah, we purchased the two buildings next to the Lincoln Center. And we've got some options there, either moving into those buildings in a year, 2 years. Or possibly tearing them down and building a new administration center. If it was just administration, we would be doing it today.
Sure.
The problem is the maintenance side of that and finding another location. I'm not sure there's another location. I've been looking for 11 years to try to find somewhere else, and we just can't seem to crack that nut. So we may have to just keep that building, but then partition off the admin center and then lease that out.
As I recall, we don't love being landlords.
We do not love being landlords. We now, and seem to be becoming more landlords. I understand that. But the problem is, I have no faith that that thing's gonna keep running. I mean, it's broken all the time. You
Well,
know?
it's not just that, it's also the alarm panel, that's what.
Right.
yeah, well,
You know, I mean, are we
Yeah,
just-
they're going on eBay to find parts now. We've been limping this all along for a couple years, hoping we would be out of there. Yeah,
we have this
we
conversation quite
agree,
often.
we agree with the conversation completely. It's just, we're at a point that I'm gonna be calling you with an emergency replacement because it's that bad.
I mean, how much money, obviously there'll be a savings in operation, it'll be more efficient, correct? That's what the goal is.
That's our hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And repaired, well, right.
So, I mean, would it be more advantageous to put that money towards a new facility for administration? I mean, and updating those and having a more efficient overall building.
Don't disagree at all.
Be certified and.
We just,
Cause that air conditioning is over the whole building. You couldn't do one for just maintenance
It's the
side, since
entire-
that one's
it's
gonna
the
be,
entire
they might be
building.
there for the.
Right.
time.
it's the entire building. Yeah, if it was multiple units, but it's one big. And I don't know. I've walked in there a half dozen times this year and it's 85 degrees in the building because it's not working.
Yeah, I think our issue is we're caught between, you know, what do we do with the building and, you know, in not finding somewhere to put maintenance. I think maintenance is a big one. And we talk about it all the time that, you know, we need, if we continue to wait, it's just it'll end up breaking down. And then the fire panel, life safety, I think that's the hard part. It's kind of,
Well, and is there any resale value in it? Like sometimes, you know, my company, we buy a switchgear and it's taking too long to get there, so we buy another one. So we sold the one that we bought the first time. And there's like some value that you can get back on that. Is with these units, like say, the building wasn't gonna get destroyed in a couple of years. I guess somebody else would already have bought the building from us, so it'd be up to them.
Yeah,
So they were-
if we're gonna sell the building and they're gonna use it, like you with your home, they're gonna do a building inspection. That's gonna come back that,
I guess for some reason in my head, I just keep thinking people are gonna want to just level that thing and.
right.
yeah, I don't know.
Just seeing the development that around that area.
Yeah.
Just like. But yeah, obviously, if we're just telling it, somebody wants to use it, it's value, a lot of value. For the person. And just, you know, on that shelter, I hope we go permanent structure. I'm a big fan of going, otherwise you put the other one in, you want to replace it in 5 years and you pay money all over again for the same. I'm hoping that that's the way
That would be our brother.
Are we planning on running that shelter out for parties or anything else like that?
Not that one. We have the rental in the spray ground, and then the courtyard has areas. That one would really just be for people using the playground and pickleball. I think they'll sit under there between matches.
Will the pickleballers fight against the parents that sit there?
Possibly. I can't promise you nothing on that one. And then Craig, just a little background on the maintenance. We've looked at multiple buildings in Ellsworth Industrial. We actually looked at the old Cass Fire Department building. I've looked at some stuff downtown. Just the ton, we just haven't found anything that's gonna work. We talked about partnering with Public Works. There's just not enough room. Public Works doesn't have enough room to absorb us to do that. Talked about moving more to column and then having a smaller site, but that doesn't really solve our problem because we just shifted it all from the north to all to the south. One of the old plans for the village hall, not the current one they're building, is they're now selling off part of that property. It was actually going to free up property. And we talked about putting a facility there. So we're looking all the time. That's just the piece that makes it really difficult for us.
You know, all these places along Warren Avenue.
I've looked at a few of those too. And the problem with Ellsworth is they're all really big. They're big sites, really expensive.
Yeah.
It just cost didn't make sense in there.
Any other questions on the list for 2024 projects?
Just one quick question. When Dunham Place was the last playground that was completed?
Dunham was the last one we did, correct, last year.
What's the cost on that?
That one I think was about 175,000, I think was our budget. I think we came in under that the actual cost. I think we budgeted 175. So just real quick, wanted to touch on a few projects that we're currently projecting for 2025 capital budget. We've also Dorhofer Park tennis courts, tennis and pickleball courts are another one that we've been talking about for a while. After we resurfaced them in 2014, we had issues with water that was pushing up through the courts, caused a lot of cracking right away. It didn't hold up very well. You can see the image on the left was in 2021. We did redo the color coding last year in anticipation of McCollum Park. So before we tore up the tennis courts at McCollum, we recolor coded Dorhofer so that those would be in better playing condition since the others were going to be out of commission. This photo on the right is actually from this year, from maybe a month or two ago. And so it's actually held up fairly well this time around, the color coding. We will continue to see cracking because anytime you have those cracks, the color coding doesn't stop the cracking. It will come back. But we had originally proposed Dorhofer renovating those courts in 2024. But looking at them today, the condition today, we feel like we can get another year out of them. So we're right now projecting to do that project in 2025. And that would be tearing up the asphalt surface that's there so that we can put new under drains under the courts, under the surfacing, and then redoing the asphalt and the color coding would probably need to include fencing around the perimeter. That if we're going to tear up the asphalt, we probably are going to have to tear out the fencing as well. So it would be a little bit bigger project to do those courts, but that's right now proposed for 2025.
And given the condition, we think we can get another year or two out, and that allowed us to flip and move up some playgrounds. So we were able to accelerate some of those playground replacements.
And then we are also showing a couple of playgrounds in 2025. So in this case, we were looking at Fishel Park Playground and Sterling and Davis. Sterling and Davis is another one of our older playgrounds from 1959. Fishel's a little bit newer, 2005, but it does get quite a bit of use from the church just to the north. Kids come out from their preschool daily, come out and use this playground. And then obviously, I'm sure if anyone's seen it on the concert nights, it gets pretty heavily used on concert nights. Kids are swarming onto this playground on Tuesday nights. So anyway, that playground a little bit more heavily worn. It's also a brand of the manufacturer of that one. We feel like is not as held up as well. It's our only playground of this particular brand, and it hasn't held up as well as some of the others. So again, sure.
Is that a park that we would look to make any bigger? Because it is so on those concert nights, you know, elbow to elbow.
I think so.
Or you're looking at keeping that footprint?
We would, I think that we would keep that footprint, although I think we can get a little bit more equipment within that footprint. What's there now? There was another piece of equipment, I think next to the swings at one point that was removed. And so we think that we can get a larger play structure within the existing footprint. And the other part of that project would be that there is retaining wall on a couple of the sides of that kind of define that edge, and we would look at replacing some of the retaining walls, some of the block wall. But in general, there's also a couple of trees just outside that playground, that large, nice trees that we kind of would hate to take out to enlarge the playground. So we think that the size should be sufficient if we get a little bit bigger play structure in it. And then we'd also do any ADA improvements as needed at these two parks. So the official budget is a little bit higher because we're talking about doing some of that retaining wall replacement work as well as part of that project. Parking lot we have at the museum, so it would be the main parking lot on the east side in the long driveway you can see here. So it would be replacing all of that, resurfacing that, which was again last renovated 2005, and so we were projecting this for a 2025 project. And there's some ADA improvements that are necessary when we do our parking lot renovations as well. And then back to the administrative offices, we like we did here at this building, we replaced the HVAC rooftop units, and then the next year or not long after replacing those, we would then look at coating the roof once the HVAC is done. And that is the coating that we used here that essentially preserves the roof and extends the life of the roof, the existing roof system that you have. The system that we've been using has a 12-year warranty that includes inspections and repairs as needed. So that one, I think we have a quote for that to be at $175,000. So that's all of the projects that we have for 2025 at this time. This is the 5-year capital plan that we've put together. If you can see this, you'll notice that the first year there on the right side, so 2024 is a much larger number than the other years, but that includes the $600,000 of grant funding. So we're showing the full project price there of $875,000 for Constitution Park. But so of that 2.2 million budgeted for next year, 600,000 is grant funding. And then you can see we have 1.5 million projected in the projects that we just showed you for 2025. And then around $1 million, $1.2 million for 2026, 27, and 28. That's our typical amount, but that does not include, Eric mentioned, a possible bond issuance, rollover bonds. So we're not showing that in this at this time. But
I forgot what term you used at the time. You said
It's signed.
By property.
The contingency, the land contingency.
Land contingency. Would be on this chart and just not on this chart because we don't have it for those future years?
So typically what we do is we just add it to the budget a given year if we have properties that we've possibly identified. It just comes out of fund balance, and then we try to refill that fund balance over the next couple of years. We've never put it on this chart because we never have an idea of what may come.
But that's the whole point of the contingency.
In the future.
We don't know what may come. We want to have that.
So
Our pops up that we can use for the maintenance folks. We don't want to
Right.
not have the money to get some.
So what we We can always add it back to the budget if that's the board's directive. That's number one. Number two, what we've looked at it as, that's fund balance. We keep a high level of fund balance. We keep about 6 months. So 750,000, that's not even 10% of the fund balance typically that we could dip into if we needed to. For anything that's larger than a typical parcel of property, that would have to possibly be a larger discussion.
And I don't know how my fellow board members feel. I mean, it's just virtual. It's just a thing to show, nothing locks any funds in. I guess I like seeing that, that there's some money that we don't want to touch just in case the property comes up. But whatever my fellow board members think it's to do it.
We could put it in there, just as a line item. And typically, if you put it in there, we would have to choose between some of the other projects because it would come out of that. But most of the land stuff, if there isn't a land deal that's moving ahead by July, it's not going to close in this fiscal year anyway. Or we can set the terms usually, so it would be in next fiscal year. The property we bought by Lyman Woods, we specifically did that. We also did a purchase contract, so we spread that out a little bit. So my point to that is if we haven't in the first 6 months identified any land coming, we can move that contingency and on the fall projects. That if you'd like it to show up in the budget, that would be one way we could do that. I probably just made him go great, but.
I'm used to that.
Dovetailing on the earlier concerns, I kind of agree with Brett I think that in the long-term forecast, we should be looking at placing the administration building pretty much now than later. It just seems like the cost incurred, the new roof, the new HVAC, the fire panel, that maybe that's something we should consider and something more. I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but I think at one point we're chasing good money after bad. What is your,
it just sounds like there's nothing else available, right?
Yeah.
That we would be able to find, especially. Yeah.
But I'm talking about forecasting it for the future.
Yeah, it sounds, I know you guys know what you're doing. You wouldn't be doing this expensive. Right. You really didn't have to. I really hate doing it. But, we would sell the building if we could or lease it or.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're gonna need to do this to make that money later.
And part of the catch-22 is the two buildings that we purchased. For us to move in there, we'd have to spend money on that too. So, and that's trying to get that all to fit in. And I'm not convinced the more I think about it that a new structure on those, tear those two down and build a new structure on there may be the better way to go in the long run. But then I know.
Yeah.
Well, they're old.
It's gonna be a hard one.
I agree with
That's a possibility. And, but trying to figure that out, and we literally just bought that, so,
And the reason we can't jump ahead and move in there now is because the maintenance equipment problem still exists.
So even if we moved our man in there tomorrow, we still need to replace that air conditioner and that fire, because I can't sell the building because I got no place for maintenance to go, which means I'd want to lease that out to somebody else and create a revenue stream. And the maintenance still needs heat and air, and it's all tied together. I can't separate that.
Unless we get a developer that wants to raise the building about that corner.
And we have talked about that. And EDC has put feelers out there. We've talked even with Alter back in the day, how where the hotel is actually flipping those properties. They would take ours and we would take theirs. The problem is the grade on that.
Yeah.
Is, it's two levels and it just makes it difficult. And they would have built Class A office space on there with parking underneath. But that market is really soft, and so they're not looking to spec on that. So it needs to be class B, class C, which is what we have. So it's just, trust me, I keep trying. I would love nothing more than being downtown. I think our administration should be downtown where the other local governments are at. And I think that would be much more efficient for all of us. And I think our presence should be there. Just haven't found a very good way to do that yet. Those two houses give us options down the road, but it doesn't solve our air conditioning and our emergency panel problem. We probably should have replaced those a few years ago. I know Kevin would have loved to do that. I'll be honest, we've been kicking the can down the road, hoping something, would come to fruition.
The other area we looked at, as Bill said, we have some ideas for funding of some of this. That will be difficult, especially if we can't sell the administrative building because of the maintenance side of it. And a lot of the future funds will also have to look at the other needs that we have. We are not behind, but we do have older assets in a lot of areas like parking lots, playgrounds, the Lincoln Center, that Paul has a second list in addition to this that is actually other ideas of stuff to fund. I think it's about $3 million, but don't currently have funding sources. So that's another area of it that we're looking for funds always. We're looking for grants. We're looking for options. As Bill said, it's getting creative eventually.
Sandra, do you have anything? We don't want to forget yet.
No, I am listening, but I'm good. I don't have anything to add.
I mean, so I guess it's just in sum, I mean, don't do anything with the land contingency this year. We're very late in the budget cycle. I'm not asking for that. But I would give concurrence to the projects that Paul went over tonight. Next year, as much as I don't like investing in that building, it doesn't scare me. Option.
We try to be very minimal. We don't replace carpet. Probably should do windows or trying to not put a whole lot into it.
Just looking forward to that relocation.
Me too.
Yeah, Paul, good job. I don't have anything, but I get concurrence as well, but it's very well thought out. Thank you.
We want to move on to ADA.
Sure, if you're ready.
So we have in 2021, we completed an update to our ADA transition plan. We typically do a 3-year every 3 years. We typically do an update. We include a 3-year budget recommendation each time we do an update. So that budget recommendation as part of that 2021 plan was for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Got us through the current fiscal year. We will need to do an update to the plan again this winter. But we are able to put together a list, a proposed list of projects, what we would include in our ADA project list for 2024. So I don't have a presentation on this. I just wanted to show the board the projects that we're proposing for the 2024 budget. Again, we typically budget $100,000 each year for those improvements. A lot of them next year would be making improvements at some of the parts where we're doing other projects that we can kind of include it as part of the overall construction phase. So we've got improvement. We've got some money budgeted to do for Constitution. There are some existing sidewalks there that we have to actually adjust replace to correct some ADA issues and some other things there. Also at Gilbert Park with the parking lot, the pathway, some improvements along with that. Museum, and then Northside Park. I mentioned the pathway leading to the playground would be an example. We've also got some money budgeted for Second and Cumner Park, just some correcting some wheelchair ramp access into the playground. So those, we have a list there attached to the memo. I'm happy to answer any questions about those.
No questions.
No other action, just concurrence from.
Correct.
Go ahead then. The verification plan.
Eric.
So this portion of it is discussing finance options of how we would pay for this. I've kind of spoiled the party and talked a little bit about it in the budget presentation. But we are looking at a $1.5 to $2 million irrigation system that would expand throughout the 9 holes of the course. With this type of dollar amount, we do need to plan as to how we would fund it, since we only bring in up to $2 million a year in that course. As I had proposed, one of the options is setting some money aside today. This option basically sets, let's say, up to a $1.3, $1.4 million aside through 2025. If additional dollars become available, we would use that money. Otherwise, we would take an intergovernmental loan from another fund, from our fund balance, to then pay it back. This is how we were able to complete the range cover a few years ago. The second way that we could achieve this would be through a straight governmental loan from ourselves, from another fund. This would be less advantageous in the fact that we would spend additional dollars from the governmental side of operations, taking some interest dollars that we could earn. However, it would be an interest-free way of getting those dollars. So we wouldn't be paying interest, but we would also not be earning interest on these dollars. The final way would be a straight debt issuance. For example, I priced out $1 million. So if we had to go $1 million of the $2 million, right now that'd be about a 4% rate over 10 years. So we're talking about $125,000 a year. So that would cost us about $1,250,000. 250 of that would be interest. Of these 3 options, currently staff would recommend the first option that I listed on your sheet. It's option 3. I apologize, I went backwards. Just because currently we have the funds to set aside, we believe that this would be a very strong use in them because they're going straight back into the course. And if revenues do better, we can allocate more revenues towards it. Otherwise, we can take a loan out from another fund when we have a more firm number, sometime in 2024, 2025. I can entertain any questions.
That's what the budget is based on.
Currently, that was what was presented in the budget. Setting up a minimum of 1.3 million by 2025.
We wanted to lay out the different options since later in the meeting, we're gonna ask for action for consultants to start designing that system so we can get a firm price. So we wanted the board to be aware of what the different in the future, the different funding options potentially would be. Staff has been internally working off of option 3 because we do believe that's probably the most fiscally responsible and the most efficient way for us to do it.
No, I have no questions. If you're looking for direction, we should take the staff's recommendation as far as I'm concerned. Option 3.
I think it was. Yeah. Sandra? Any comments, Sandra?
Sorry, couldn't get my button to go. I concur.
Thank you.
On to the next item, portable ice cream.
I'm gonna turn this over to Kevin. We have a recommendation for portable ice rinks going forward. Kevin did a lot of work on the cost before we made that recommendation. So I'll turn it over to Kevin just to give a little background and then have any board direction. We're not looking for action. We're just looking for concurrence from the board.
Okay, so since 2016, staff has installed and maintained 2 portable ice rinks. What we've found over the years is that it seems like we're getting less and less days of skating. However, we also have a challenge with with the ice rinks, just from a vandalism standpoint. You'll see, if you take a look at McCullum Park, because we didn't have it protected by any fencing or anything. We got on an average about 6 to 8 days of skating. And what happens is, kids will come in and you can have as many signs as you want up, but they'll jump on it and break through it and then cut the liner. And then it's all over from there. So basically we'd come back and try to repair it. And it's very difficult to repair once you got water. You pretty much have to pump it out and then, put water back in it after you repair it. So as you can see, we spend a lot of time on these and unfortunately, French Pond is kind of put by the wayside, unfortunately, because we're trying to keep these things up and running and, and try to keep them. So when it does get cold, we can open them up right away. However, it seems like weather's getting warmer and warmer every year. And I heard that El Nino is supposed to kick in this year again. And it's supposed to be warmer and drier. So we'll see if that happens, but we're just looking to, just with the amount of resources that we're putting into it, typically you can only get between 2 and 5 skaters, depending on size with these. I mean, they're 60 foot wide by about 100 feet long. And it's just, I don't feel that it's provides sufficient skating for the community is I guess what I'm getting at. If we were able to focus a little bit more on Prince Pond, I know it's all depends on weather and everything, and keep that clean. And I think, a day of skating on Prince Pond would, I think, make up for these 2 portable skating rinks. That's just my thought.
And just the village works with us on Hummer.
Correct.
But I'm really hoping for, I missed where to go to, but we talked about that at one of the previous board meetings.
Correct, right, yeah. They're
Take a
gonna,
lot of pressure off Prince Pond,
absolutely.
because Barth Pond's now just like too deep, it never freezes.
So what happened with Barth Pond is just the amount of storm water going in there now. There's a channel underneath and it just keeps there's a constant flow of water there.
That's why it is, yeah, 'cause that's what I used to grow up playing on too. A lot of
Right.
Times too.
And I think it was 2009 when we stopped using that as an ice rink, just because of that reason. And we actually dropped, the last time was it was 8 inches everywhere else, and down the center, it was only about 3 to 4 inches. So we had a tire going one of the pieces of equipment.
When we just looked at the amount of man hours, time and expense on those versus the amount of days we were getting, there's not enough cost benefit ratio there. And the other issue from our staff, Kevin's staff, maintaining those have to happen at night. It's not sunny when it's a cold. So you add that on top of everything and if we were getting a month out of it, it would be great. But we're getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 days. It just, for the cost and the effort, just doesn't seem like it's making sense.
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate an email or 2 on it, but I
sure
did the
will.
cost benefit analysis.
Right. It's,
Dawn will be ready for those.
yeah, I mean, ideally, if there was another way, but just from talking to some of the other districts that have done these in the past, it's they've done away with them as well. I was just talking to someone from Westmont. They had 2 of them that they did, and their board went the same direction, just because with the warmer weather, and then the kids wouldn't stay off of them, to get the right ice thickness and so on and so forth. It was just a challenge. But like I said, it's a lot of hours, and it's not so much just that we have to, none of our water sources are very close to these ice rinks. where we had them located. Especially with filling them and then having to bring a large amount of water. Usually it's, well, at Whitlock, it was about 450 feet. We had to run the hose, and then McCullum was about 500 feet. So that was a challenge as well. It's just trying to keep them maintained correctly. Sometimes you have to flood them to get them back. Especially when kids jump on them and vandalize them and break through and so on and so forth.
So I wish we had like a larger regional thing going on,
Right.
sharing those resources, having a large enough ice rink that a lot of people can get on there. But yeah, I would support not installing them this year.
Everything else along the line of like a Prince Pond that would lend itself to ice skating. I think of Dunham Place.
So we talked about that a little bit, and I did a little bit more research, and I think the biggest part with Dunham Place is the fluctuation of water, because it is a retention area. The way that it's set up, the low water level is it's 14 feet deep. Those ponds are right now, and then at the high water level, it's about 24 feet deep. So that's when it floods, and what I've noticed over there, just because I've seen it so many times, we get too much water fluctuation in those ponds there.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's deep.
It's not, for the reasons you laid out here. It was a good written memo. Yeah. I agree.
I do think, as Brett mentioned, we are working with the village from an engineering standpoint, if they do any work at Hummer, to try and add that back to the system.
Cure.
That's the cure.
And then, we're gonna try to, allocate some additional hours to Prince Pond as well, because just from, when I started here until the past, since we put these in, we haven't been allocating the hours to trying to get that up the way we
Did
should.
we shovel that, or did like the people?
So the neighbors will shovel it, but then we have to go and try to get rid of the big piles off there. Otherwise it insulates it too much. Right. So, and that makes it difficult, but, again, it just, hopefully we can focus a little bit more time on that to try to get it up, if weather permits.
What are you gonna do with the old, are we just gonna dispose of the property or put them up for sale or?
The biggest part of them are the liners. We do have the sides, but some of them are starting to deteriorate just because we've had them for, 8 years. But the liners you have to buy every year, just because they're between getting cut or, because it never fails when you get an inch and a half of ice, someone gets on it and, it just falls through and cuts it with their skate.
What about the Zamboni?
We got rid of that. We used to have a 1969 John Deere tractor for Prince Pond that we used to use as a Zamboni.
Andrew, would you like to add anything? Any thoughts?
No, I agree. That does seem like, I love the effort to try and make this available, but the time spent and the days not that we don't have that weather anymore. I agree. It's unfortunate, but it makes sense.
You have a concurrence?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead then to electric vehicle charging stations.
We'll keep that
Sure.
with Kevin. This
Yeah.
is the project Kevin's been working on.
So we've done quite a bit of research on this, and I laid out two different options. The first option is to purchase and hire the installation, which is very expensive. With this option, we would have to do all the maintenance and on the system. Pretty much you just buy it and it's yours and you have to take care of it. We're not professionals on EV charging stations, so the second option is a third party option, which there's two vendors right now that are in this market. It's Blink and ChargePoint. It seems like Blink it seems like they're a little bit more popular out there. And this was brought up by the company that we're currently working with. So basically what happens is you have to pay for all the electrical infrastructure. So you have to hire an electrician to come out and put the infrastructure in. And then Blink will come out and install the charger, get everything up and running for you. And part of the third party agreement would be, there's a revenue share along with, they maintain everything, they pay for the electric, and, they monitor everything. So all the charging and, pretty much takes us out of the mix other than, the revenue share part of it. And then there's an agreement that goes along with it. Unfortunately, the agreement is typically between 5 and 7 years. However, there's talking to Bill, we'd have to talk to legal on that, just to kind of work through some things as far as that goes. But I think the reason they do it is just, to recoup costs. Our recommendation obviously would be to go with a third party option. We're not looking for that tonight. We're going to do a little bit more research, but we're just looking for concurrence on proceeding with this process to bring back to the board with a contract.
And we wanted to bring it to the board, get some direction if you'd like us to proceed with pursuing option 2, probably with Blink, because there'll be some contract negotiations there. As Kevin mentioned, one of the biggest hurdles that we'll have to work on in language. It can be done, and we've done it before, but we need specific language. We are only authorized by state statute to go up to 3 years on contracts. So we'd have to put some triggers in there that would satisfy the vendor, so they make sure they get enough time out of that contract to recoup their cost, as well as keeping us in compliance with the law. There is some acceptable language for that, but we would have to come to agreement with that, as well as just flushing out all the costs and the locations and everything else. So we wanted to bring it to the board before staff put all that time and effort in that, and just make sure that that was something the board wants us to continue pursuing. We would also plan for that in this upcoming fiscal year to make sure we have funds available in the budget for the installation.
So Bill, you're saying that there could be a possibility, the company, are you gonna do a sole source justification for it, or are you gonna open up for RFP?
We've done quotes and proposals, so we've already done that.
Okay.
So we would pick a vendor that would had the best terms. It's really the contract language within there that we would have to work out. Yeah.
So it might not be advantageous monetarily for the vendor for a 3-year contract.
Correct. And my guess is probably not based on that.
And the only question that I had is that, here at the fitness center, there's plenty of parking. But parking is a premium at the golf course. I don't know, what would we do if somebody parked there that doesn't have an EV?
Can we yell at them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
paying them for moving it, but parking is just that's a premium. I don't know if that was my only concern.
Yeah, I think we could put, 2 or 3, probably 2. And maybe where some of the staff parks up in the front, sorry, Ken, but not a whole lot. We kind of picked the golf course, frankly, because of the time.
Yeah.
And someone's there at the golf course for a length of time, and it makes some sense. A lot of our facilities, people are in and out, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This facility made sense, and the golf course made some sense. And I've never, I don't know, Ken, have you ever found where we haven't had I always find one, but I always park in the back.
The only times we're getting those problems when we're starting to have parties and things that are non-golf related. But the golf course supports the golfers in the driver range sufficiently. We have the Downers Grove 50th high school reunion this Saturday. parking will be a pretty,
Sure.
but on 99% of the days, there are a handful of parking spots, not a lot, but maybe 5. that are-
I've parked on the side street once or twice, so
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
so-
not often,
Right.
but yeah.
You know, the other thing, I think we've turned a point where there's almost an electric car in that parking lot, and all of our parking lots, almost all the time. I mean, I see Teslas all over the place, different cars, so
Do you
know,
have to
hopefully they
use
park
it?
there.
I guess my question is, you're an EV.
you do not have to use it.
You don't have, but it's just reserved for EVs.
Just correct.
And just a little bit more background on what we're looking at, just from an electrical infrastructure standpoint, there's 3 levels of chargers. You have the kind you put in the house, your house, and then you have level 2, which that's what we'll put in because that's the electrical infrastructure we have. We don't have and then the next step is the fast charger, which is, you know, you can charge, I think, your vehicle in an hour or something like that. Those are very expensive. So that's why, you know, you'll see them in malls and, you know, like Target and things like that. But we don't have the infrastructure to support those. That would be very expensive to add as well. The level 2 chargers, it says that it'll charge in 1 hour. It'll give you about 65 to 70 miles charge. So that's what we would be putting in.
And would you tap off the lighting?
No, we'd have to directionally bore a line. It would have to be its own dedicated line.
Its own dedicated circuit to it. Okay.
Have we talked about the locations for these things before? I don't recall that we have.
No, the board has just given staff direction to look at charging units. So this is really the research we've done, and that's why we wanted to bring it back to you for discussion. So
Because I always pictured it at like a McCollum. You know, people can go there and be like, I gotta charge my car anyway, let's go play tennis. You know, I gotta charge my car anyway, let's go play the splash pad. The rec center, to me, it limits it to members, basically, because you wouldn't, if you weren't a rec center member, you wouldn't come park here for an hour,
Right.
you got nothing to do. So it doesn't open it up to the community as much. You know, the golf course is okay too, because, you know, you go putt around, you go sit at the clubhouse if you want to for an hour. But I say it's always expected at a place that more of the community could use, so that more of the community could benefit from, you know, having charging stations around, because they aren't everywhere yet. So I would like to see that at like a McCollum as opposed to at the rec center. But as far as going with a third party, we're not doing this for the money, you know,
Right,
so we don't care.
right.
About
And that's all we really need today. We can look at those
It's
sites.
nice to have that in.
I think you'd have to see what kind of power we have out there. And
Yeah, we would just have to take a look at that as well. So
Yeah.
Sandra's off mute too.
I would just say that, you know, as far as the rec center goes, there are all the kids in sports, you know, so you've got the basketball, et cetera. So you do get, you know, quite a few full parking lots with non-members. And I do think, you know, I know McCollum is one of our biggest and busiest, but the rec center is, you know, the visibility as well, and perhaps easier to get the electric too. I don't know.
it's probably about equal, I think, if getting the electrical too. However, the area we were thinking here, this isn't set in stone, but on the far east end, northeast corner, and then we put a sign up as well right off the corner that you could probably see as you pull in, right there.
By the handicap,
Right, yeah,
okay,
the far east end.
so the 2 spots at just before Belmont, you'd make those.
Mhm.
I think there were 4 there, right? There were 4 spaces at the end of the handicap stall. There were 4 spaces that would work out to do two posts that would have charger on either side. So you would get 4 parking spaces
Okay,
for chargers essentially.
And I guess I would say, even with the basketball programs here, it's still people signed up to our programs, right? It's something that somebody can be like, well, I gotta charge my car. I need to find somewhere to charge it right now. How can I keep busy while it's charging? Because that's always a struggle for people with electric cars. I gotta sit there and, you know, find a place to go into, have lunch or something like that. I just think that McCollum offers that more than a place that's just tied to people who participate in programs, people who members at our gym.
We have, this building has an awful lot of people that come through it, but you are correct, it's a destination based on an activity. It's not just a drop in.
So
Whereas
I can go
with the
walk
park-
for a mile,
right,
right? I can go walk
that
around the
is-
loop if I want
yeah.
to at McCollum anytime I want. Here I can't just.
Well, let's look at them and we'll weigh the pros and cons and bring it back. We haven't had that in the mix and, you know, maybe it's here in the column and not the golf course or figure that out.
And I just also, you know, when I see having the electrical vehicle chargers, it seems as if that's like a benefit for, you know, the people utilizing our facilities, not necessarily where can I go charge my car, because I would think that is their garage, you know, so I would see it as something that would be in addition what we offer, you know, to people who are participating in our programming.
We'll take a look at it. Yeah. If the board's concurrence is for us to proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Very good.
Thanks you.
Landon?
We'll move on.
Our board meeting schedule.
So it's that time of year where a dean starts putting together the schedule for next year. It's just wanted to have a discussion with the board of maybe changing it up a little bit. We're all aware we've had some difficulties with quorums and getting meetings and that. And one of the options, you know, legally, you don't, frankly, you only are supposed to have, legally, you only have to have one meeting a year. That's crazy. We really need one every month. But a lot of districts will do just one meeting a month and they will combine their workshop meeting with their board meeting. And I just wanted to throw that out as an option. If we could do a 6 o'clock start, and I promise I won't keep working out in the gym thinking it was 7 o'clock. I actually saw you walk out and I thought, oh, what's he gonna do for an hour? And I'm up there. But we could start at 6 o'clock with a workshop immediately following. That way people know when the board meeting would start. And if we don't need a workshop, then we would finish. And maybe that would make it a little bit easier if we just had one meeting, or we can still do the old schedule. But I just wanted to throw some options out there.
Personally speaking, I'll probably be available after next Thursday.
I would go either way though.
Whatever works best for everybody else, including staff.
Yeah, we're flexible. We'll do whatever.
You're pitching just doing one Thursday a month and.
Yeah, and then you can,
Isn't it?
right, just doing it once a month, but combining everything together. Make longer meetings, obviously, but that way we would just combine it, and maybe that makes it easier for people's schedules to work around it.
I don't have a preference either way. I don't mind committing to the 2 Thursdays.
Sandra, you're off mute.
I as well, the summers are different, you know, my more difficult time that I'm not around as much, but starting, you know, next month, then I'm here until next June. So I know that, you know, John's schedule is, you know, more difficult. So I'm flexible. You know, I'd be amenable to a longer meeting, but I'm also amenable to 2 meetings.
And sprung on us.
It's just for discussion. Don't have to make a decision today, and I think we would, you know, John's not here, so have to talk with him too.
Sometimes things come up and it's good to touch base twice a month.
Yeah.
We do cancel
And we
in
can-
August and
We
December.
can do hybrids too, where we just pre-plan the summer months to have that format. And then from like now through the winter to the spring, do the other format. We can do a hybrid too. I'm just throwing it out, trying to make it easier for the board. From a staff perspective, and do whatever.
Any more time today? I don't know why that's such a weird aspect of it, just the whole thing.
Well, you want to table it till John gets in and
Yeah, we can do that. And then that gives you a chance to just think about it. I know I kind of sprung on you, but was
And
thinking
I'm out of
about
town
it.
next week for next meeting, you know, I'm out of town all the time, so.
Have more thoughts, let me know. We've got a little time. Don't need to pass that until December, so.
Playground surfacing discussion.
Yeah, I did, the last one, I just wanted to again, get some thoughts from the board and some direction. Our playground surfacing, the vast majority of the surface, safety surface that's in our system right now is that wood fiber, which is the manufactured wood. It is considered ADA acceptable, but I would also say that it has its limitations. It is hard to get a wheelchair and stuff through that. We get a lot of feedback from parents that, you know, that it comes home with them in the car because it gets in all the kids in that. We have been doing more and more of the alternate surfaces, poured in place, and the new product, the turf product. And what we just wanted to put out is to create a district standard. The board concurred that going forward, we would look at phasing out all the wood chips. They also take a lot of maintenance. Kevin's staff, pretty much every playground that has those need to be touched and raked almost every day. And what do you, I know it, but what do you spend a year in wood chips?
Well, we budget about $25,000 a year just to top it off.
Just to
The chips,
chip it off.
they settle, they get kicked out, you know, that kind of thing. So we have to keep a certain depth of it for the impact absorption. So we currently spend about $25,000 a year district-wide to top off the mulch. That's just for the material, and then Parks staff does also rake almost daily.
What we would like to
Time as
propose
well.
is just make that our new standard going forward. So as we replace a playground, we would look at a non-fiber safety surface. And I'm sure there's gonna be more products coming online that we don't even know. So that's why I won't specify an exact one. With the length that playgrounds take, you know, to replace, it's gonna take 15+ years to work that all out of the system. There is a higher cost to that on the front end, not on the maintenance end. So that's, you know, if we're putting that standard in, that means that's gonna be an additional cost. We have been moving in that direction anyway. So we just wanted to see if the board concurred with us creating that. You don't have to vote on it or anything. We would just create that as our design standard. And then Paul would know when he's designing that that's what he would be looking at.
The other cost, the replacement of it, Paul's talked about that, the 15 years, it would kind of go hand in hand with the replacement of playgrounds, what the standard by the Department of Natural Resources is. So we would do that all at one time. It would be a one-stop shop to replace the ground and the playground.
I think most people, the users of the park, would enjoy seeing a phase out of wood chips. I don't think anybody likes wood chips. So as far as enjoying the park, if there's a value in doing that.
We a lot of negative.
And just a question, I'm all for the non-wood chip surface for wheelchairs, for strollers, et cetera, for maintenance. Just a curiosity, safety wise, is there any, you know, measurable difference on, you know, if a child falls from, you know, monkey bars onto wood chips or onto this type of surface, if there's any difference there?
No, the new surfaces have to meet the same fall standards.
Okay,
And honestly, they're consistent because they don't move. So the reason staff has to come by and rake under the swings in different areas over a course of a day, if it's used a lot, that wood chip gets kicked out. And it's
Okay.
no longer performing at the same safety level as if it was full. So that's why we constantly have to put it back in those areas. On the other alternatives, poured in place and turf, which are the two right now, they don't move. So they're always there. So it's very consistent.
okay, all right, then I agree with this being the new standard.
If it's good enough for Paul, it's good enough. And there's a labor.
think it's-
cost too, we're safe.
Oh,
Not just
absolutely.
material for
That's what we're-
the labor of.
It's labor, it's, I think, user satisfaction. Yeah,
And then the other part of it is once the wood chips are in there for so long, like we have some playgrounds that are 25 years old, we have to go in. It was just recently, I think we went into, I think it was Lloyd, and dug it out and filled it back in with new wood chips. So it's much more expensive to do that than just top it off as well.
it rots, it becomes.
Becomes,
at the bottom.
yeah, it becomes dirt.
I think as Eric mentioned, we would suggest that the poured in place rubber, we think should have about a 15-year lifespan. As long as we stay on a schedule of replacing the playgrounds themselves on that time frame, then it would align with the surfacing and the equipment would be done at the same time.
The one negative that I've heard on the turf, it does sometimes, some of the products have more of an electrical static charge than others. But that's really the one thing. I don't know if you've heard any other on that.
That's the primary thing we've heard at this point, which usually it's when it's like carpet essentially. And so when it's brand new, after it first goes in, that there can be some static. But
It is.
There's no way to ground that and earth that.
No.
Or anything?
It's just like you would get in your dry house, that little static thing.
One
Would have had fun playing on that with my parents then.
One playground that does have artificial turf is Leicester. So,
John brought that up.
Yeah,
I
right.
went and looked
Yeah.
at it. I hadn't been there before. Actually, it was pretty nice.
It is really nice. I think there's a place for the two different ones. I don't think,
Right.
we use one product everywhere. It's nice to kind of mix that up a little bit. But, safety surface, we were talking about it. I remember as a kid having asphalt underneath, particularly the swings, right? And then it went to pea gravel, which when it rained and then it froze, it was ice. And then it became wood chips, and now we're evolving into this. All right, thank you.
Move on then the action items, to authorize executive agreement with Sept Design Group. Bill,
Yes, so staff is asking to authorize myself to enter into an agreement with EC Design Group Limited at a cost of $35,000 to begin services for an irrigation system replacement at the golf course effective January 1st, 2024. By passing it now, by giving authorization, we can start working on that contract with vendor, and we just make an effective date with the 2024 fiscal year.
items I had questions on. If you're comfortable with this, I just thought one was that consultant maintains the right, but not the duty to recommend to the planning or to reject work that does not appear to conform generally to the plans and specifications.
Pretty standard language, but we would, and we would still have
No
to,
duty,
right?
would
So,
expecting that he would.
so legal counsel hasn't looked at this yet. We haven't vetted it. We just wanted to, that's why we asked to authorize me to negotiate that contract. That will have to come back to you again for final approval. So normally we do all that ahead of time. We just wanted to make sure, given the cost of this and the financing, but again, before we did that work, the board wanted us to proceed with that.
And it is a 2-year project, a timeline kind of thing. So like getting it started in January of next year is essential to have it work take place in fall of 2025.
So you're probably 90 days for vetting it through the legal counsel and negotiations, maybe.
Or less.
Or less. Okay.
Yeah, typically, staff goes through it. And then legal counsel brings some of those kind of things up. And then it's back and forth.
Okay.
And then why I say that's typical language, it's probably their standard boilerplate. Sometimes you just gotta accept it because they won't do anything else with it, period. But we try to go through all that.
Okay. I need to have better response probably than.
Right, so you're not approving the contract, you're just authorizing me to negotiate a contract.
And Craig just brought up, I think it's important to everybody to note that it's the irrigation system, it's the computer system that goes with it, and then the pump house as well. So really, it's a three-pronged project, but it's all tied together, so.
Like what, a Commodore 64 we're running in?
But
Floppy disks.
Pretty close.
Chris may have some experience with those.
Looking for a motion.
Yes, please. All right.
Mr. President, I move the executive director, authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement with EC Design Group Limited. The cost of $35,000 to begin services for the irrigation system replacement effective January 1st, 2024.
second,
I'd like to offer an amendment. Authorizing me not to enter, but to negotiate a contract, the language, I'm wrong. But
reread that into the record then.
you can say as amended.
Just.
Yes, do I have to, not the whole thing, but
Just agree to the amendment.
agree to the executive director's amendment. It says here to enter into it.
It does, we wrote that incorrectly.
Well, we should be, we'll just restate it.
To enter into negotiations.
Correct.
Okay. So amended.
Right, so seconded with the amendment.
Okay, so that's amended. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Katsula.
And Sandra?
Thank you.
She doesn't.
She
Oh,
can't
she
vote.
can't because of the vote, we didn't go over everything.
And last for action item, looking for approval of the amended personnel policy manual. Those are in your packet. All but one of the items brings us into compliance with changing labor law. The one that is different that staff is recommending, in line with our DEI efforts and some feedback from staff and feedback that we've gotten from other districts. We would like to recommend adding an additional holiday, and that would be the Juneteenth holiday, starting this coming June. This would affect non-union members because they have a contract. And when we would renegotiate the contract, we could look at having that as part of that. So this would be for all the non-union members.
You have one quick question though. So, and I'm sorry, maybe it's in here. I missed it. So if the holiday falls on a weekend, okay. So like,
Yep. It would just follow, it would just be an additional holiday and follow our standard procedure.
Is the motion here to adopt the recommended changes? Is that
Correct.
kind of crazy?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to adopt the changes to the personnel menu or manual. Coincide with legal and district updates.
second,
Any discussion?
Okay.
Any comments?
Sorry, no comments.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Lunt,
aye.
Mr. Katsula.
Okay, moving on ahead, second option for visitors.
There are no online visitors.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, with that, then I'll announce that the next Downers Grove Park District Board meeting will be held October 5th, 2023 at the Recreation Center multi-purpose room. Need for executive session.
We do not, our next meeting next week, we will have an executive session.
Real quickly before you move forward, John, Bill, did you get any, I know you briefed the board, I was gonna ask you about this, for McClellan, the noise at the pickleball. You were gonna look at some options of,
Yeah, so, in the very beginning, particularly the timing, I think us moving very quickly on establishing what I would consider reasonable hours for that, really has, I think, addressed that. We really haven't heard any more comments from that. Early on, the feedback was thanking us for being, responsive to it. So I think just changing those hours have really addressed that.
did we put it in, I'm sorry for asking, did we put in the locks and the automatic locks?
We're still working on that.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, because we have to pull power. There's a couple things you have to pull power. We had to get quotes on that. And there's also some of that fabric that was installed was damaged. So that is on the punch list to be replaced. So we don't want to run any of that electric or any of those modifications until we sign off on the fencing. So it's going to take a little bit of time for us to do that.
I was just curious, so we are planning,
We are still planning to do that, and we would be putting security cameras there as well.
What you'll likely see as a time frame is you'll likely see the cameras up sooner rather than later. The fencing will take a little bit longer.
okay. Thank you, sorry.
No, thank you. Good question. Ed, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah,
We're adjourned.
what do I have to say here?
You have a second.
Second,
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Lund,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
And again, I apologize for being late. I totally forgot it was 6 o'clock. And when the dean's like, "You're making me nervous," I'm like, "Why?"
I thought you were kidding with, about
I was not.
Dave, and I'm like, is he messing?
Dave, I was all sweaty and